Well, these attacks come amidst a growing humanitarian crisis in Aleppo. For more, I was joined by Michel Gabaudan, President of Refugees International. So, Mr. Gabaudan, chlorine gas may have been dropped in Aleppo. In addition, almost 2 million people are trapped there. Just how grave is the situation in the city?
Well, you have well over 1 million that are in the areas controlled by the government, and we think at least 250,000 who are in the areas controlled by the opposition, what the government calls the rebels. There have been two developments in the past weeks. First, there is tremendous amount of shelling in the city, and that has destroyed completely the electrical grid and the water supply. And I'd like to remind your auditors that it's 95 degrees right now in Aleppo. You know, it's extremely hot and dry. But also there's been a process of siege that first the government started, blocking completely access to the area controlled by the opposition. And now the opposition is also trying to block the access to the government-controlled area.
So it's a horrific situation. And what is the impact on those people of living day after day without running water, without electricity?
Without food now, the prices have gone extremely high because those people who still hoard food are calculating that they won't get supplies anymore, so the prices are getting out of reach for the local population. And without medicines, I mean, doctors have written recently to say how the very few doctors left in Aleppo have said they don't know how to treat people, and they have to make terrible choices on who to treat and who not to treat.
So the UN is calling for this 48-hour pause every week to allow essential supplies to get through. Is that sufficient, even if the Russians would agree to that?
Well, that would be a tremendous improvement over what they have offered, which was a 3 hours pause in hostilities. In 3 hours, you can do nothing. You have to remember that the roads are terrible. In 3 hours, you cannot bring supply, identify the vulnerable, decide on a distribution mechanism, etc. It won't work. It would trap the humanitarians into the conflict. So the 48 hours are, for the moment, perhaps the best solution, but we need much more pressure on the international community, on the Russians for that, because right now it's the UN negotiating on their own.
And in Raqqa, 20 people were killed today, and there are reports that the water supply was cut off there too. How dire is the situation in Raqqa?
Well, I have no recent report from there, but I can imagine in the climate that is currently the case in Syria, when you have no more water and very little food, I mean, children are going to suffer very quickly, and what we are going to see is the lateral consequences of conflict, which is people die not of bullets, but they die because of lack of very basic essential services.
And do you see any sign at all of a ceasefire that would bring an end to all of this horrific suffering?
Well, I would like to see perhaps less focus right now on the battle against ISIS, which is justified, of course, but which is mobilizing all the attention between the Russians and the Americans, and a consideration of what's happening to civilians in these cities. I mean, that is the emergency today. The other issue is essential, but we have perhaps more time to address it. Right now, we have people dying of things that are eminently preventable.
Michel Gabaudan, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.